where two or three are gathered together, there's going to be trouble. It's inevitable. And Jesus gets right to the point, doesn't he? He said, what happens if somebody sins? And he begins talking about the process by which you would restore this person. And the church has often looked at this as the means for church discipline. And sometimes that's been used and works well, and sometimes it's been abused. But if anything, it's particularly countercultural, isn't it? I mean, if somebody sins against us, the temptation is to go and talk to someone else. You know what that so-and-so did to me? And so it's not, I'm going to go talk to others about what that jerk did. But Jesus says, no, go talk to that jerk and regain that fellowship. And it's particularly important, I think, to understand that when Matthew is writing to his congregation, he's writing to a small group of people. A big congregation in Matthew's time was probably about 50 people. So when they got together, it might have been 20 or 30 people that got together for worship, for study, for a meal. And so it was kind of like a family reunion, you know? And you know what family reunions are like. You've always got that one, Uncle Harry. I mean, he's the jerk there. And he's the one that disrupts everything. And you kind of hope that he'll behave himself this time, but he doesn't. And after a while, you just get fed up with him, and he ruins the gathering. And if somebody would go talk to him, he'd probably get upset and be even worse. And so sometimes you just don't invite him at all. But Jesus says, no, this is important. Because when we gather together, we need one another. It was particularly true in Matthew's day. Obviously, they needed one another. They're small. But let me suggest to you that there's much more going on here than simply church discipline. We need to look at more of this chapter. Matthew begins this chapter with a question from the disciples. Who's the greatest in the kingdom? And Jesus says, well, let me show you. And he takes a little child and he puts it in their midst. And he says, you know, if you want to be great in this kingdom, you've got to be like this child. Humble, dependent, willing to listen, meek. And then he goes on to talk about the little ones. He's moved now from a child being that little one to members of the congregation, maybe new members, maybe those who were struggling, those who were economically poor. Little ones, he says. Don't put a stumbling block in front of one of these little ones. In fact, he says, that's a serious thing. It'd be better for you to have a millstone tied around your neck and thrown into the sea than for you to put a stumbling block in front of one of these little ones. Again, the importance of the community, having everyone there. And then, just before our lesson, he has that wonderful parable of the shepherd with 100 sheep. One of them goes astray. One of them is led astray. And he leaves the 99 and goes out to find that other one. And so again, the importance of having everyone in the community. And then immediately after our lesson, Peter says, well, how often do I have to forgive my neighbor? 7 times? And Jesus says, no. 7 times 70. Try to keep track of that. The importance of the community. It's as if Jesus is telling his disciples, none of you does this alone. You need one another. And so Paul, when he's writing to the Romans, talks about the importance of love. He's already told us that we ought to let love be genuine. And now he says you don't owe anyone anything except to love one another. And part of that love is this restoration process, getting us back into the community, holding the community together in love. It's important. When Paul writes to the Corinthians, he uses that wonderful image, that image of the body. He writes to them and he says, you are an incredibly gifted congregation. You've got all sorts of spiritual gifts, and you've got gifts for practical ministry as well. But the problem is, you're looking at those gifts as if they're just for you. And so one of them will say, well, my gift is better than yours. And we don't really need your gift. And so he uses that image of the body where he says, the body is made up of many different members, but one member can't say, well, because I'm a foot and not a hand, then the body doesn't need me. And the ear can't say, because I'm not an eye, the body doesn't need me. No, the body needs all of those parts. And again, Paul is writing about the importance of the community of faith, bound together in that love. He'll say there are all sorts of gifts, but they're all manifestations of the same Spirit. But what does it say to us today? You are the gifted people of God. Paul would write that to you. Paul would say, you're empowered with amazing gifts. And we've seen it. And each of you is necessary for the community of faith here in this place to reach out beyond these walls. I've seen it happen here. We have something called a food pantry. When it started out, it was just a few people. And they got a little bit burned out. They worked really hard. But they managed to serve a number of people twice a month. But over time, others have started joining in. And now we've got a large group of people that gather together to help out the food pantry. You get the opportunity to do that today if you want to. You can go down in the basement and help pack those boxes. Each one of you is needed in this place. Do you know that there's a small group here that goes up once a month and serves a meal to the students at NDSU in the campus ministry section up there called Crossroads? There aren't very many that are involved in that. It's a good way for Olivet to make connections with Lutheran students at NDSU. we have a Lutheran college here over in Moorhead, but you have more Lutherans at NDSU than you do at Concordia. So making a connection with those students is important. Many of them are here a distance from their homes, and they'd love to have a congregation to be a part of. Would you like to be part of that? They'd love to have you come and help serve. And if you got too many to serve, then just sit down and eat with them and talk with them. We have a place here called, now it's called Micah's Mission. It used to be Churches United for the Homeless. Churches United. They recognized that one church couldn't take care of the homeless and those that are struggling with food issues in this community. And so many churches got together. And each of those churches is needed in order to be God's hands and feet in this place. All of this, Jesus says, is important. Each member of the congregation is important, and you don't want to lose one. You see, the purpose of Jesus' instructions here is not so that you can go out and point out the fault of the other one. Not so that you can go out and say, ha ha, you're wrong and I know it. It's not to correct them. The very first teaching here, when he says go out and talk to this one individually so that you may regain that one. As he starts out talking about this, our translation is a little bit misleading, I think. It doesn't say if a member of the church sins against you. It says if a brother or a sister sins. In other words, there's a relationship there. Member kind of sounds like, well, it could be anybody out there. But this is one who has a relationship with you, a brother or sister in the faith. And you want that relationship restored. And by the way, the against you is not shown in the most respected manuscript. So really it's just, if a brother or a sister sins, it's disrupting the community of faith. And that's what needs to be restored, that sense of community, because we need one another. You are all gifted, but you're gifted for more. You're gifted for the benefit of the community. You're gifted for the common good. You're gifted to be a peacemaker in the midst of trouble and turmoil. You're gifted to serve those most vulnerable in our society. You're gifted to be a member of the church that proclaims Christ crucified and risen. You're gifted for more. You're gifted to be an ambassador for Christ, to be one who makes connections with others, who brings that good news, that gospel, that grace and love to other people. Maybe it's as simple as inviting someone you know just to come and see, and hope that when they come here that they encounter Jesus and experience grace. You're chosen. You're gifted. And your gifts can be used in God's mission in this place. Because, as Paul will tell people, this is God's work. This is God's work, our hands. And we do this when we gather together as a community. So each member of this community is desperately needed in one way or another. What are your gifts? How do you use them? How do they build up the community? The good news is that whatever your gift is, that Jesus will work through you. That where 2 or 3 or 4 or 400 gather together in His name, trying to bind this community together and keep these relationships going and doing God's work with our hands, that Jesus is in the midst of that. And He causes good things to happen. He brings hope to the hopeless. He brings power to the weak. He brings mercy to those who have failed. And forgiveness is at the center of it all. This is good news for us. We are the chosen, gifted people of God who are ambassadors for Christ and doing God's work with our hands. Now, if I haven't tied it all together by now, it's time for me to say amen.